promoting the violence over here, or maybe the call of balkanization of a sovereign nation.
You think India was involved in it or whatever? Where's the evidence? Show the evidence. Matter of fact, Singh Road in Kamloops is named after my grandfather. Which is taught us that we had to do the right thing and not the popular thing. Well, the only reason you got promoted again was because of your color skin. I said...
And they all were white?
They all were white. When I honestly think, Sameer, I was put there to fail. So, infamous Bindi Johal and Ron and Jimmy DeSange dispute. And what we saw at that time, a lot of the young Indo-Canadian youth were now fascinated by Bindi Johal. The media made such a large issue. He was sneering at me and nodding and making gestures towards me. Days later, that guy was shot to death. Have these extortions taking place, and these people dropping Lawrence Bishnoi's.
ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਡਰਬੀ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਇਨਸਾਈਟ ਵਿਦ ਸਮੀਰ ਕੌਸ਼ਲ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਲੜੀ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਅੱਜ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸ਼ਖਸੀਅਤ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਖੋ ਵੱਖਰੇ ਅਹੁਦਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਬੜੇ ਮਹੱਤਵਪੂਰਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਔਰ ਇੰਡੋ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬੜੇ ਮਾਣ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੱਖੋ ਵੱਖਰੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਿਭਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਐਕਟਿਵਿਸਟ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਨਾਲ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਲਗਭਗ 5 ਦਹਾਕਿਆਂ ਤੱਕ 45 ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਵੱਖੋ ਵੱਖਰੇ ਅਹੁਦਿਆਂ 'ਤੇ ਰਹੇ ਔਰ ਨਾਰਥ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਐਸੇ ਸ਼ਖਸ ਬਣੇ ਜੋ ਇੰਡੋ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਡਿਸੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਪਿਛੋਕੜ ਦੇ ਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਡਿਪਾਰਟਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਚੀਫ ਬਣੇ ਨਾ ਕੇਵਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਪੁਲਿਸਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪੋਲੀਟਿਕਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੱਥ ਅਜ਼ਮਾਏ ਗਏ ਔਰ ਉੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਸਫਲਤਾ ਹਾਸਲ ਕੀਤੀ MLA ਬਣੇ ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਔਰ ਜਿਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੋਲੰਬੀਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਖੂਬਸੂਰਤ ਸੂਬਾ ਹੈ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦਾ ਉਸ 'ਤੇ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਸੇਫਟੀ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਅਤੇ ਸੋਲਿਸਿਟਰ ਜਨਰਲ ਬਣੇ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਘਾੜੇ ਬਣੇ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਨੂੰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਬਣੇ ਔਰ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਸਮੇਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਬਤੌਰ ਸਿਟੀ ਆਫ ਰਿਚਮੰਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰ ਨੇ ਪਰ ਇਹਦੇ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਉਹ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਸਮਾਂ ਜੁੜੇ ਰਹੇ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਡੂੰਘੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੇਵਲ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਡਰਬੀ ਦੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ 'ਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਿਲ ਨੇ ਕਸ਼ਮੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੀਡ ਫੇਮਸਲੀ known as Kash Heed. Mr. Heed, thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you very much. It's my absolute pleasure to be with you once again.
I know you understand a bit of Punjabi.
Yes, and I want to thank you for that introduction. That was very nice from what I could tell.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Just for my listeners, ਕੈਸ਼ ਹੀਡ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇੱਥੇ ਬੌਰਨ ਹੋਏ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਪਿਛਲੇ 100 ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਇੱਥੇ ਰਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਔਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਾਣਾਂਗੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਸਵਾਲ ਜਵਾਬ ਵੀ ਪੁੱਛਾਂਗੇ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ 'ਚ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਔਰ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਆਟੋ ਡਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਇਆ ਜਾਏ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸੁਣ ਵੀ ਸਕੋ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਹੀਡ before we start with your childhood memories or your background, I am intrigued to know about the changes in your career. Which career you enjoyed the most, from policing to politics to media to, community activist?
I'm still looking for it. I'm not sure. There's been ebb and flow in all of them, positive times, negative times. But what I found, Sameer, is simply that none of them were an easy fit for me. I had to fight for what I wanted, what I needed, and all that. And my commentary with respect to where changes are needed is, a voice that I feel strong about. So is there a favorite one? No, I'm still looking. Maybe that's why I'm still working.
That's great, but which career you like the most, or where you feel that you give your, most of time? We are very much sure, as far as the duration is concerned, or term is concerned. Policing was the career where you spend most of your time.
Yes, 32 years in policing, and certainly that was an area that I was able to make a lot of difference. That was an area where I was able to be a pioneer for so many different activities, whether related to our community or just someone that was going to do things for the right reasons versus a popular reason. those are some of the intricacies within the Vancouver Police Department that certainly qualified me to be the Chief of Police of the West Vancouver Police Department. So if I had to look at the length of time, it would be my policing career. And it's a career that my mother was very reluctant that I get into, but when I did get in there and I started moving through the ranks, she was very, very happy with her son.
Definitely, we're going to talk about your mother as well, why she was reluctant for you to go to policing, and now you are in politics, activism as well. Let's start with your childhood memories. Any special memory or any learning that is still inspiring you? And if we can start with more of your background, where you born, and how many siblings were there?
There's 4 children in the family. We were all born in Kamloops, British Columbia. At that time, the community was very small in Kamloops. At that time, we were known as East Indians. That's what they referred to us as. And that's where my grandfather certainly set foot in and was able to get involved in the lumber industry, get involved in the farming industry, and really showed his dedication to working hard. And I think that was probably one of my earliest influencers when I was very, very young, of seeing how hard my grandfather worked. And certainly when the family started to evolve and we started to get older, we started to recognize that there's so much more that we could do as members of the community. And that's when you started to see more of the East Indian families settling in Kamloops. My grandfather was hiring several of them to work in the various businesses that he had.
Your grandfather was the first person in your family who arrived here?
Yes, he was Sher Singh, a very well-known pioneer in the Kamloops area. Matter of fact, Singh Road in Kamloops is named after my grandfather.
Sher Singh.
Sher Singh, yes. And he had the Punjab Lumber Company, which was well known. He started the first, what we called packing house back then, which is a co-op, known as a co-op now, with the agricultural industries that he was in the apples, in the peaches, in the asparagus. So again, it was a potpourri of various things that he got involved in, and certainly that was an early influence in my life.
And your grandfather was born in Punjab. Do you know which place?
Yes, I believe, and I don't know this for sure because we'll get into how the family split up, is I believe he was from the Halawar area.
Halawar, that is near Ludhiana.
Yes, yes. And my mother was from, I believe, the Jalandhar area.
Any childhood memory which is still very close to you, inspiring you all in your life, different phases?
It's my mother. And simply because when I was only 10 years old, I'm in the middle of the family. I have 2 older siblings and 1 younger sibling. She took the 4 of us. She was in an arranged marriage and left our father. Took the 4 kids, moved out of Kamloops, moved to the Vancouver area, and we settled in Richmond, BC eventually. And she raised us on our own. And she always taught us that we had to do the right thing and not the popular thing. We had to be responsible. And that is probably the guiding principle about doing the right thing that is pretty well led me through the various careers I've had and continue to have. She is probably the largest influence on my life and will continue to be. I just hope that my young daughter, that I can influence her, and it's difficult at this time when she's a 17-year-old teen, that she must do the right thing, not the popular thing.
And policing was your first job?
No, I had several jobs, and my mother wanted, like every one of her children, to go to university. I went to university.
What was the trend at that time? I mean, that's, I believe, 55 years back.
Well, it wasn't getting into policing. I think some of the memories that she had in her mind was, unfortunately, some of the policing, for example, in India and various things like that. And when you look at that, so she wanted me to go into something else, obviously. I did not want to, for example, some young people, that's their lifelong aspiration to be a police officer. It never was mine. Mine was to be a teacher or a pilot or something of that nature. And I remember when I was in university and I came home and said, I don't want to go anymore. And then, you know, the jutti came out and like, no. You either go to university or you go to work.
So you were not one of those kids to call 911 when there's a, scolding from the parents?
No. Well, back then, a different generation is, we listened to our mother. And sometimes you don't get that amount of respect the way you should now. But no, certainly listening to her was very, very important. And we didn't dare talk back to her with respect to what's going on. And we recognized that it wasn't easy for her on her own to raise 4 kids. So when she said, you've got to go to work, so I started looking around. And one day I decided to apply to policing, and I didn't even tell her. Went on my own and went down to
What was your age at that time?
I was 20 years old.
Wow.
So I went down to the Vancouver Police Department. I walked into what they called the staff development section at that time, and they handed me an application and said, how quickly could you get this into us?
What actually inspired you to pursue the law enforcement career?
Nothing specifically. Nothing. If I have to go back, other people have asked me this question. If I had to go back, I have recollection of a memory in Kamloops where 3 RCMP officers were shot by the arena in Kamloops. I was very, very young at that time and certainly admired the police at that particular time. If I had to go back, that was, somehow settling in my mind, and I guess it finally did come out years later. So when I went home and I thought I better tell my mother I'm going to be putting in this application, she said, no way, my putt is not going to be a police officer. No way. She was so opposed to it. And I remember, one of the few times I defied her and I submitted the application. And it wasn't until the 2 detectives came to talk to her to try and convince her that I would be a suitable applicant for policing. And just the personalities of these 2 individuals convinced her for me to at least apply and go ahead.
So how was your journey so far from submitting your application in VPD and up to the chief of Vancouver Police? I mean, it's a very long time, for sure.
32 years. It was not an easy journey, and I'll tell you right now, for example, when I got into the Vancouver Police Department in January of 1979, there were only 3 other Indo-Canadian. Then we started to be called Indo-Canadian police
Not
officers
the East Indian anymore.
at that time in the department. And, it wasn't easy for them. And I remember going through the academy, getting the top marks of the class, top marks physically, and then on graduation from the academy, there's an award that's given out to the best recruit. And everyone thought I would get it. I didn't. I had no expectations. It didn't matter to me. And finishing top of the class and all that. And this is certainly something that's motivated me in my career. Is the deputy chief in charge of the recruiting section and all of several other sections in Vancouver on graduation day went up to my mother and said, I'm sorry. And she said, what are you sorry about? My mother was so proud to see the ceremony and her son graduating, the pipe band and all of that. It was a very happy day for her. And so she couldn't figure out what he said. He said he was supposed to get the top award. And she said, well, if he did, why didn't he? They wanted to give it to another person, a Caucasian person, because it was the first recruit that then at that time known as Matsqui had put through the academy. So my mother reluctantly told me this story. And I think that kind of, again, set in my mind and motivated me to even try harder in everything I did. So, when I was going through the various competitions and going through the ranks, I was finishing at the top of the pile. And people were saying to me, in what I view as a prejudicial fashion, is that the only reason you got promoted was because of the color of your skin. Yet, I was the highest in the exams, highest in every aspect of evaluation for the promotion process. And so I was promoted to corporal and then promoted to sergeant. And then they were saying, well, the only reason you got promoted again was because of your color of skin. I said, Jesus, why the hell do they make me go through a competition if they're just going to promote me from the color of my skin? Just promote me now and save me all that work.
Do you feel or do you smell the feeling of discrimination during that time?
Oh, absolutely.
On the basis
absolutely. But I did not lay back. And this is the difference from what a lot of people do. Now, I did not lay back and become so upset and disenfranchised, for example, with the Vancouver Police Department, when those issues were brought up, and there's lots of other prejudicial things that happened to me in my career.
Like what?
Well, people hanging up religious Sikh symbols, above my doorway and various things like that. I'm not a practicing Sikh, but if I had to go back into family history, of course it's being Sikh. And I'm just proud to be a person of who I am, of a Canadian born in Canada. But the color of my skin always affected me, but it motivated me to try harder. And so one particular example was when I was going for a commissioned officer position. Again, I started finishing at the high end of every aspect of the competition. What happened then is they started to move the goalposts. They started to say, oh, we're not going to evaluate this one as much. And everyone knew that the intent was so I would not get promoted. Now, a very important thing happened here where, in fact, it drove a lot of the concern that I had with policing that I absolutely continue to speak out about. So when they made the list to go from my position to a commissioned officer as an inspector, all of a sudden my name was the cutoff name. The ones above got promoted. Where my name was, you didn't get promoted, okay? But there were positions open and available to whoever.
So that intention was from your superiors,
yes,
the bosses, or
yes,
from within your colleagues?
Nope, not my people within the same
rank.
Part of it. They were the people that would make the comments about me only getting promoted because of the color of my skin. But here, when it was quite obvious of what was going on, it was by the senior executive of the department at the time, because they controlled the competition when you go to a commissioned officer.
And they all were white?
They all were white.
And what was their behavior at that time towards you while talking or while looking at your merit?
So what happened was, and I had been recognized on, Police Officer of the Year previously, recognized on the, crime prevention, an outstanding reward. I'd been decorated by the Canadian Bankers Association. I received several chiefs' accommodation. You name it, I was actually in there doing that. So what I did is I challenged them. When I did not get to the rank of inspector, I challenged them. I challenged them legally.
An inspector is a pretty senior rank in Canada.
Absolutely. It's the third highest ranking position in the department. So I challenged them. And when I went to, for example, talk to one of the deputy chiefs at that time that was in charge of the competition, and I said, and I documented everything. That's one thing I do is I document everything. And he said to me, well, you always try and bring your A game, but sometimes you've got to have your B game. Sometimes you've got to just go with.
What were they referring to? What were they referring to, the B game?
The B game is don't try as hard as I try on various things. How ridiculous could you ask? But I documented every word said and all that. And I went to complain. I had a lawyer. We complained regarding the unfairness. This is the first, and I challenged them. I thought, I'm sick and tired of spending so many decades fighting for what I have, and now you're playing this game. So I challenged them, and I won the challenge. I had a lawyer. It went to the police board. The police board at that time hired an external lawyer to investigate it all. And when he came out with his findings, it was very damning on the executive of the Vancouver Police Department at that time. I was immediately promoted. I was given a year's salary
Increments
as an inspector in compensation, and I was delivered an apology for what had happened. Then it just took off from there. It just took off.
That's great. And that was with the VPD?
Yes, it was all with the VPD. So then I was a duty officer, the highest officer in the operational part of the city at any given moment. And then
That was during 80s?
That was in the 90s. Okay. Then I was transferred to the drug section, the person in charge. No one of my seniority was ever given. The drugs section was in complete chaos. We had a crack cocaine epidemic in Vancouver. At the same time, we had a proliferation of marijuana grow-ops all over the city and residential areas.
I think we still have that.
Well, you still have a portion of it. Now it's a bit of a different drug. It's the opioids, the lab-made opiate called opioids. So that's a problem we have now. So they gave me that because it was in total chaos. The person that was in charge, they had to move out immediately. And I honestly think, Sameer, I was put there to fail. I had an opportunity. I changed that drug unit around like you would not believe. I had testified in front of the Senate Committee about drugs. I testified in front of the House of Commons Committee on drugs. I was interviewed by media all over the world, given the situation. I ran projects based on interdiction of supply, but at the same time, I called for reducing the demand through treatment for these particular individuals. It was unbelievable. I remember after I testified in front of the Senate Committee, when we talked about the issue of cannabis with Pierre Nolan, I was front page of the papers all over Canada, where the senator said, I was a person that has gone to where no other law enforcement official has, and talking about the situation as we have it. So, I was there, and I just, threw my whole life into it. At the same time, Sameer, I was completing my master's degree at Simon Fraser University in criminology. So, that's what the
you made the challenge more harder.
It not only made it more harder, but more interesting, because now, involved in my master's thesis, I was talking about the drug situation in Vancouver. I was profiling 600 prolific drug traffickers operating in the downtown east side of Vancouver. I did full descriptives on them, full literature review on what would work, what wouldn't work, and and that made international headlines. Matter of fact, after that, I was invited to present at the New York Academy of Medicine. I was invited to present at the Rayburn House to Congress, and I was invited to present to the Drug Policy Alliance in Los Angeles. So I traveled all over based on my accomplishments as a commanding officer of the drug unit.
Were you married at that time?
No, I was still single. I don't think I had time to get married.
So what was the response of your mother at that time when you were dealing with all those drug related cases and? So what happened at that time? My mother became ill. Okay, and I was dealing with that.
And we did lose her due to cancer. And so it was a very trying time. But again, I think my personality was one, when I go through a crisis, it motivates me to do things a bit differently. So when I was promoted to superintendent in Vancouver, my mother had already passed on. And then from superintendent and here's an interesting part, is you understand my trials and tribulations with the Vancouver Police Department. So I competed for the chief of police job in Vancouver, okay, when I was a superintendent. I was shortlisted. It came down to two of us. And what happened at that time is I was given a phone call on the Monday saying, you're going to be appointed the chief constable on Wednesday afternoon at the board meeting, but you've got to keep this absolutely quiet. I didn't even tell my wife at that time. I was married by then. I didn't even tell her. And I remember it was 6:15 on Wednesday, getting a call from Sam Sullivan, who was the mayor and chair of the police board, telling me, Cash, sorry to say, we've had to change things here. We're promoting Jim Chu.
What happened?
I'll get to that
in those few hours.
What occurred? I was so upset. I said, thank you. And he said, we want you to stay and be a deputy. I said, no. And I hung the phone up. Okay. I was so angry. The next day I go into work with a smile on my face at my desk by 6 o'clock, like I am every single morning at my desk, talking. And a couple of my friends come in and say, sorry you didn't get the job. And they're real close friends. And then let's go for a latte down at Starbucks, just, down the lobby and out. And just as I'm getting up to leave, my phone goes off and I see on the display Western Management Company. Well, Western Management Company was the recruiter looking for the chief job in West Vancouver. I didn't pick up the phone, okay? And I went and had an extended coffee with my friends, and which was fine. I came back to the office, and it was probably close to 9 o'clock, and I thought I better check the message, and it's Western Management, and so he said, we would like to talk to you. I thought, okay, they've already spoken to me, months before, and I said I wasn't interested in the West Van police job, chief of police job. I'm interested in the Vancouver chief of police job. So I phone, and it's Jerry Humphreys, and Jerry says, sorry you didn't get the job. Could you just come down and talk to me? He says, I said, Jerry, I'm not interested in West Van. He says, just come down and talk to me. His office is in the tower at Butte, Georgia. And I remember going down, I was in my white shirt and superintendent uniform, and I go down very casually, and I walk in to the 15th floor there, or whatever floor, and he says, oh, just a sec, I'll be with you in a minute. And he comes out and gets me, and he says, come on, let's go in and sit in this room here. It's the boardroom, and he's got half of the West Vancouver Police Board in there, including the mayor of West Van.
Wow.
I'm thinking, okay, and I'm, a bit of a smile on my face. My wife was from West Vancouver. That's really all I knew about West Vancouver. And, I just been through an extended competition to be the chief in Vancouver. So I sat down and I kind of thought, and Jerry's kind of smiling at me, and I said, okay, whatever. I said, you guys can ask me anything you want. I no prep, no notes, and I banged off everything that they had, and I get up and leave after only about 45 minutes or whatever. And Jerry says, thank you for coming down. Thank you for sharing that. So then I'm driving home, or driving back to the office, and I get a phone call from Jerry Humphreys. He said, could you come and meet the entire board tomorrow? And it was at Lawson Lundell, because one of the board members was part of that law firm. And I said, okay, I thought I'd better go home and figure out. I didn't even know the population of West Vancouver. I didn't know anything about it. It's probably one of the safest communities in all of Canada. So I went home, and the next morning I came and had a very short meeting with the entire board in the boardroom at Lawson Lundell. And we were going to Palm Desert, my wife and I, the next day. So I remember telling Jerry, he says, we'll get a hold of you. I says, well, I'm off to Palm Desert. And, you know, that's all there is to it. So I phoned my assistant in Vancouver and says, I'm not coming back to the office. I'm leaving tomorrow, so I'm going home. So I went home, and what do? I go to the gym as usual. Sameer, I work out every single day for 2 hours. And I remember I was on the elliptical, and I get a phone call and says, we want to offer you the job, and we want to sign a contract as soon as possible.
Wow.
So that's how I hadn't even applied.
That was the loss of Vancouver Police Department.
Within 48 hours.
So what was the reason? I mean, why did they give you any kind of explanation why they?
No. So I was bitter. I got to tell you, I was bitter because I'm from my policing career of high-profile commands and working hard, whether it's on the gang issue or whether it's on the drug issue. And that's go, 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 okay? West Vancouver is the safest, most affluent community all of Canada. Nothing happens there. I just took that job out of anger because I didn't get the Vancouver police job, and it was because of Sam Sullivan's attitude to do that. So what I find out later is that one of the individuals, the chief at the time, who was told that I was going to get the job, was sworn not to tell anyone, but he went and told Jim Chu at the time. And I guess the Asian community got very motivated and put pressure on Sam Sullivan to change his mind. That's what I'm told from people in very influential positions, and that's the reason I did not get the job. So, that's it. Again, it motivated me even more.
That was like office politics, I can say, or departmental politics.
Right from when I graduated from the academy until I left Vancouver Police. I faced that all along.
Let's talk about your hand-on experience on the gangs and drugs. Because in 80s and 90s, how did the rise of figures like Bindi Johal fit into, if we talk about the broader landscape of South Asian youth gang activities in Canada?
Well, there is a reason why, in my opinion, that so much attention was given to the behavior of our Indo-Canadian youth here in Vancouver. And a lot of people want to blame it on the religious part of it. We've heard some of those arguments about the boys. And, yes, the boys do get spoiled and things like that. But there's certain other aspects of it. For example, when the infamous Bindi Johal and Ron and Jimmy DeSange dispute was actually taking place, it was all over bravado.
Were they part of organized gang activities or any organized gang?
Well, at that time, there was very, very little gang activity or gang organization going on. There was a lot of youth delinquency at that particular time, and a lot of groups of people that were getting involved in some type of behavior. But when this actually took place, and you started to see some of the arguments going on the evening news, soon after, one of the DeSanges was killed, and then Bindi Johal challenging the other one, and them challenging Bindi Johal. And what happened was, and we're a very proud community in that we always try and aspire to be the top of something. And what we saw at that time, a lot of the young Indo-Canadian youth were now fascinated by Bindi Johal and thought to themselves as they could get that notoriety quickly, just like he did. So a lot of it has to do with the fact that the media made such a large issue of this dispute at that time, and it just perpetuated from that point forward. We had spikes in our youth getting involved in it. We had, again, it all started out, as I say, over bravado attitude, not necessarily the sale of drugs, but then it pretty well morphed into the sale of drugs, because now we saw that that's the only way these people could make money. And, the money they had, most of these boys were living at home, eating the dar roti from that mom cooks and all that. And all the money they had was what was ever in their pocket.
Were they drug peddlers at that time, or what was their modus operandi?
Well, they weren't heavily involved in the drug part of it. They pretty well sat at the mid-level of drug trafficking. Now they're actively involved in the lower level, whether it's a dial dope operation or some type of other operation. So they're involved at the lower level, they're involved at the mid-level.
So you witnessed the gangs become more organized in that time.
Absolutely.
And who was controlling all these gangs? Like Bindi Johal or Ranjit Chima, the Dosanjh brothers? Or?
Well, back then, first of all of them have left us. They've all been killed, which, in itself is a tragedy for the family. But they wanted to, what I found is they wanted to live.
They were killing each other.
Absolutely. The disputes at the end of the day are secondary to the killing of one another. The killing, and we know people are on trial for the killing of Jimmy and Ronnie Dosanjh. Not so much with the Bindi Johal, but we've had so many other people like the Dak brothers that have been killed and all of those. And I remember interviewing he wanted to talk to me, not necessarily interviewing me. I remember this one. He said, look, if you want to do anything for our communities, make sure the kids don't follow my path. And so that's the type of individual that we had involved. But if you had to look at someone at the hierarchy of it, there is no one single person of Indo-Canadian or South Asian descent that is at the hierarchy of organized crime. There's various groups out there now. It's morphed into whether it's the Brothers Keepers, whether it's part of the United Nations or some other Dak Dure type gang. It's just so. So
they were associated with those gangs or affiliated by indirectly?
It all evolved. If you go back to when the dispute first took place, where our youth were starting to get involved, there was very few gangs. We had the Los Diablos, which is probably the closest thing to a street gang, similar to what we have in the United States. And then we had these various cells that started to operate. And that's when our young youth from our community started to get involved in this. And again, not necessarily from a financial wealth point of view, but from a bravado point of view. And then with the easy access to firearm, they could raise their notoriety quickly.
Where from they were getting all these illegal firearms?
United States. Absolutely.
Smuggling,
We still, the bulk of the illegal guns in Canada right now come in from the United States.
Have you ever encountered Bindi Johal or any of these big names? What was your experience at that time, and how were they behaving in front of police? We know in media or in the cameras, but in front of police, how are they behaving?
You had the same attitude, but I got to tell you, whenever I saw Bindi Johal or something like that, because he had worked out at the gym too, a gym that I would work out, he left me alone, showed me respect. Ranj Chima, for all the notoriety he has, he always left me alone, showed me respect. That's what I found, which was different from some of the other police officers that were dealing with him. Those, notorious figures always respected me. They never, ever did get in my face like they would with other police officers.
Have you ever tried to contact their parents to get more knowledge why they are into this gang activities and stuff?
Yes. And
if you can share some experience or some.
Well, when you talk to the parents, and I've given death notification to parents whose son has been killed or son has been arrested. And I remember going into the homes In every single home I went into, you would see on the mantle by the fireplace a picture of that boy when he was young and innocent. Every single home I went into. And that's how the parents want to remember him. And that's how I would see them at that time. And it was difficult for me to tell the parents that their son is lying dead on a slab in the morgue. I remember getting doors slammed in my face because parents were in denial that that could ever happen to their son.
What were your interactions with the gangs look like? I mean, could you paint a picture?
A specialty that I had was, for example, if there's large events that would involve organized crime, such as Hell's Angels events, or, what was an event for the Indo-Canadian youth was the death and the funeral of one of the gangsters out there. I would be brought in to command the entire situation. So I developed an expertise how we were going to deal with the outlaw motorcycle gang, the Hells Angels, when they had their anniversary specials here in the Lower Mainland, or when, for example, a notorious gangster was killed and they were going to have the funeral, which, the cremation, and then they have their event after. So I'd be in charge of that, of not only gathering intelligence based on who's attending and having the resources to gather that intelligence, but again, from an operational point of view, to make sure that nothing else further happened, because the threat level was very high at any of those events. And, again, with the Hells Angels celebrating an anniversary or something within the city, again. So I developed a bit of an expertise. And what I did is I didn't come down heavy-handed unless I had to. So a lot of it was, treating them with, some type of respect, although I may not respect their activities, but interacting with them, giving them some respect, but at the same time, assertively telling them that this is the way it's going to be here. So I developed that type of rapport with them. So it wasn't always adversarial.
Have you or any of your officer, close to you, ever received any threatening calls or maybe death threats from these gangsters?
Yes. Now, it's difficult to say whether it was just some smart-ass talk by these people or there were legitimate threats. I've been threatened.
What was the mode of that threat? Through letters or through calls?
Through
or maybe just stopping you on the road?
Emails and information that other people came forward with.
So what was those threats look like?
Well, let me tell you, the time I was threatened, I was never threatened in my policing. Okay. Except one incident, I'll tell you, because there was a gangster. I was in the Cactus Club in Richmond, the old Cactus Club on 3 Road. I was there with my wife and her family, so the in-laws, having dinner. And there was one of the Desange, the other Desange, a Paul Desange family, Vicky and Paul Desange. I was in there with a group of people. And he was sneering at me and nodding and making gestures towards me.
Like intimidation?
Yes. Now, this is someone that I've never had an interaction with before, but obviously he recognized me. I recognized him. Yes, I was putting pressure in the drug trafficking industry. Yes, I was putting pressure on ensuring that we could get a handle of the Indo-Canadian gang violence.
Were you carrying a gun at that time with you?
Was I carrying my gun?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I really didn't ever think I had to. But it was in the trunk of my car, locked in a gun box. So, this happened, and, it made us feel somewhat uncomfortable. 7 days later, that guy was shot to death.
By?
Renfrew and Hastings, an argument he had with an individual. So I remember the joke around the police department, because I told a lot of my colleagues.
Individual means unknown? Shooter?
Eventually, they did find the shooter, but the joke around the police department was, where was I on that night? What did I have to do with it? Because I told them about the confrontation in the Cactus Club, so that was their joke around, but I had nothing to do with that. But I was the incident commander at his funeral for the entire day. So,
Mr. Heed, have you ever been contacted by any of these gangsters where they allegedly try to manipulate you to get some relaxation or to influence you, or maybe try to manipulate you because of your Indo-Canadian, heritage or your background with Indo-Canadian community?
No. And, I never ever was. I don't know if it was because of my reputation that was there, or like a lot of them didn't even know I was Indo-Canadian with the name of Kash Heed.
But were they scared from you? I mean, because you were at the top rank at that time.
I don't know if they were scared from me or not.
But were they scared from police?
Some were. Many were not.
So there was no respect for law enforcement.
No, and that was what I found unique, yet I would get the respect from them. But generally speaking...
That's an individual case.
Correct.
I mean, in your case. But otherwise, if we talk about the department or law enforcement agencies, there was less respect?
Less respect, yes.
And the reason was?
I really don't know whether, again, it was as a result of their personality, their bravado attitude, because a lot of the disrespect was when the public is around. Privately, they wouldn't act out the way they do when the public is around or the media is around, and they're able to show how their behavior.
How is the law and order situation right now in Canada? If you can provide some overview.
Terrible. Well, it's we're in a different decade. What has happened is law enforcement keeps trying to deal with things in a traditional fashion. Society has moved on. There's a different way that you have to deal with things. You need to reform police. And I've been a strong advocate for police reforms in all of my positions, even when I was in Vancouver and my political positions, because the police are not keeping up to society. So when we have, for example, people complaining about the people with mental health issues such as schizophrenia that are occupying public spaces, when we have people with acute drug addiction that are dying in our laneways and alcoves simply because of the lack of proper policy to deal with them, and the fact that we don't have, for example, secure care and treatment for these people, those are the issues that law enforcement should be advocating for at this particular time. But you don't have that because they still think, Sameer, that they are going to arrest their way out of this problem. I will tell you one thing. You will never arrest your way out of the drug issue or the mental health crisis we're facing right now. Never.
But if we look at a broader perspective in this case, keeping in mind the current geopolitical situation all over the world, we have seen rise or the increase in hate crimes, arsons, car theft, shootings, extortion, mass murders in recent years in Canada. What is the reason? Do you think that the police reforms is or maybe can be one of the solutions? Or is there something else, the zeal within the police or zeal within the politicians to change the law, making it more stricter?
Well, let me tell you, stricter laws are part of it. How police respond, they're part of it. Okay, there has to be balanced approaches, whether you bring in the health reform issues that are required to deal with people with that are going to mental health crisis or not. It's got to be all of that. So you've got one piece of the puzzle we start to put in place. You have to put together that entire puzzle in order for us to deal with our particular problems. So when you have all of these activities taking place and the fact that the police are just stomping their fists saying, give us more resources and we'll help you. No, it's not going to happen. The area that I look at and blame the most is your elected officials. And the reason why they are your policy makers, they are the ones that can make the policies required. For example, if it's on the mental health side, for example, if it's police reforms, for example, is creating better police structures that are more accountable to society. They have the ability to do it. We don't see that from a lot of our elected political bodies right now at this point, especially here in British Columbia.
Whenever there is a shooting or extortion call, police always give this explanation that it's from Lawrence Bishnoi, who is in jail somewhere in India, and he is orchestrating all these extortion calls or shootings and murder for hire or something like that. And at the same time, we have seen the working of Toronto police when there was a increase in car thefts. One of their police officer gave this advice to general public to hang the car keys on the front door so the thieves should not come to your home and just take the car away. What kind of policing is this?
No, it's not effective policing. Remember, policing has to be effective, efficient, and accountable. Unless we have agencies that are thinking along those lines, we're going to have these problems. So when you look at, you mentioned the extortions, you mentioned Bishnoi. Bishnoi, I look at him as the same type of individual as we experience here with Johal. Certainly a different magnitude, but when you look at the glorification of that person's name and how it's utilized. For example, Bindi Johal, we had young kids that were getting into schoolyard fights. We're saying that I'm going to bring my uncle or cousin Bindi Johal to deal with you. They weren't even related to him. So when you have these extortions taking place and these people dropping Lawrence Bishnoi's name, trying to strike the fear into these people that they're trying to extort money from, is all part of that. Now, Bishnoi, in my opinion and my understanding, could be involved in some of this stuff, okay? And utilizing resources such as some of the international students to do some of his on-the-ground work. Because the people that I've talked to that have been extorted, that have paid the money, are certainly well aware that who's ever extorting money from them, they go through a pattern of befriending the person, talking about them, talking about the family members. Usually it's a phone call from an international number and making these types of threats. And then around the third or fourth phone call, it gets very graphic on what they would do unless the money's paid. And a couple of the individuals I talked to, they transferred the money from chartered banks here in Canada back to 4 or 5 different accounts in India where it's hard to track that particular money. And usually it's people that have worked hard, that are either in the production, manufacturing industry, they could be in the building homes or various things like that. And a lot of them are self-made people that have become affluent. So these more sophisticated extortions, the culprits do their homework on the individual and find out a lot more before they actually approach the individual and start extorting it. On the other side, you've got a lot of copycat people that are just going out and dropping Lawrence Bishnoi's name, and they can't even spell his name right, and they go and try and demand money from him. And then you've got some people at the kind of the mid-level that have some knowledge, have some gangsterism experience, that are extorting money from people. Now, the difference is there's been areas in Canada that have been successful in dealing with it. If you look at Edmonton police had their own task force, and they were successful in arresting, I think, at least 5 individuals that were involved in extortions to the South Asian community, because that's what we refer to our community as now, and they were burning down the houses that were being built. And Edmonton took a very assertive approach and arrested several people. The other area that arrested several people is in Brampton, Ontario, again, because they started their own task force to go against these people. What we have here in British Columbia, there's been very little success. Just look at the recent one going on, and within a week, 2 shootings in a row, and now we hear it's related to the extortions. We've had very little success, but those areas where they have specifically have targeted enforcement, set together a group of people to go after them, have been successful.
But Mr. Heed, when senior police officers glorifying this name, or maybe just giving this explanation that Lawrence Bishnoy is behind, I'm just giving you an example, Lawrence Bishnoy is behind all these shootings and arsons and extortion calls, don't we have any provision in Canadian law where we can charge or book those international criminals in Canadian courts, whether they are here or not?
You've got to have evidence. And
so why then the senior officers are coming in front of media and naming some individuals?
Well, Edmonton has evidence, but they can't link it back to Lawrence Bishnoy. Same when you look at some of the killings that have taken place of some known figures here in Metro Vancouver area. You're just getting the shooters, okay? They're not flipping on who hired them to shoot or kill someone. Okay, it's the same thing in Edmonton where they're trying to work it back to who actually gave these people the orders to go out and do what they did. So that's the difficulty of flipping it back. So they can get out there and they can grandstand as much as they can, but if they're unsuccessful in getting charges against who they think originated this particular crime, how successful are we going to be to end it? So again, it's a very complicated one on the extortion thing. Matter of fact, law enforcement has not made it easy for a victim of extortion to come forward with the information.
Are these factors have led you to advocate for police reforms, that police is inefficient now?
Well, for 3 decades, I've been advocating for police reforms.
What do you want in those reforms? I mean,
well,
do you want more powers for police, or do you want more funding for police?
Neither. Neither. We spend in British Columbia over $2 billion a year on policing here in British Columbia. Okay? There's a lot of money. We have, for example, in Metro Vancouver, a balkanized police system where you have 24 various jurisdictions that are delivering policing. We have 11 independent municipal police agencies that are governed under the BC Police Act. The others are the RCMP. And that's part of the problem. We have to redefine policing to start with. The RCMP should be mandated just to do what they were meant to do, and that's federal policing. So they can deal with organized crime issues. They can deal with gang crime. They can deal with border security. They can deal with drug trafficking. They need to be mandated to go back to their original mandate. And then we need to have provincial police services that are looked after and guided by the provincial government. And then you've got to look at unified police services in 3 metro areas where you have the largest concentration of population, that being Metro Vancouver, the Capital Region, and the Central Okanagan.
From last couple of years, we are hearing so much about the foreign interference or the national security discussions. As a former public safety minister and Solicitor General, if you could please define what constitutes foreign interference and what are the key factors contributing to its prominent presence in current Canadian discourse or the national security discussions or the area?
Well, as you know, I was critical of the then Prime Minister for going on the parliamentary floor and saying that there is, foreign interference with really no clear information, and we've yet to hear any results of that, whether it's related to the killing of Mr. Nidger or something of that nature. And then we have a lot of people that are making noise about foreign interference. You want foreign interference? How do you think Donald Trump is interfering in other governments around the world? He tried to even interfere in our election here, our federal election here. So why are we criticizing? Why? Because we think India was involved in it or whatever. Where's the evidence? Show the evidence. Just don't get up there, like we talked about. Just don't get up there and grandstand. Bring the evidence forward. If you got evidence, go after the individuals that were involved, either in foreign interference or committing murders on the sovereign soil here in Canada. Let's see it. Don't just talk about it. We've got a lot of talk going on from our elected officials and from our law enforcement officials if you want to talk about foreign interference. Boy, I question really what they mean by foreign interference if you don't criticize that character down just to the south of us and interfering in politics all around the world.
And I think some of the community members, they go back to their home country and they do the interference over there as well in their matter, in their internal matters.
Well, yeah, I know people that go back every time there's an election in India. They go back, campaigning back in India or talking to people here with respect to, is that not foreign interference? Are they not interfering in the Indian politics back there? I would say they are. So
and
really,
even disturbing the national security by calling or by promoting the violence over here, or maybe the call of balkanization of a sovereign nation.
Well, you really have to question what is going on here. And remember, this has been going on for centuries. This is not new. We've coined a different phrase for it. The trend has changed for everything now. Look at, if we didn't change, we'd be back in the Industrial Revolution. It's changed for everything. You have the ability now to interfere in politics all over the world simply because of the internet that we have right now. You've got, algorithms, you've got bots, you've got all of that. You could just be one person and you could spread around this disinformation around the world with respect to that. So, there's got to be some a level-headedness here when you start stomping the floor saying there's foreign interference.
Mr. Heed, my last question to you, and it's very important as well. In the current geopolitical climate, do you believe that our domestic political landscape is being unduly influenced or pressured by fringe elements, particularly those whose voices may be more amplified than those of mainstream Canadian citizens, or maybe potentially overshadowing the perspective of average Canadian?
Absolutely. Just look at the trucker convoy, the demonstrations back in Ottawa and Coutts, Alberta, and various things like that. That's a slim minority of people that feel that way, but look how that affected the entire country.
I can give you two more examples. Especially in one of your case, when you gave this motion for a supervised consumption site, and there was opposition from one of small group, and also the promotion of violence under the guise of freedom of expression and speech, such as floats depicting violence during religious processions.
Well, let me deal with that first one on the supervised consumption site. We had, mainly the Chinese community in Richmond, which is a large diaspora in Richmond, complaining that these people are utilizing their drugs in public spaces, in the alcoves, in the laneways. They're seeing this all the time. We've got to deal with it. So what I brought forward was a motion to have a supervised consumption site. So you got to understand, they're addicted to drugs. They're addicted. They have to have their drugs. So what I said is, let's take them out of them using their drugs in public spaces. Let's put them in a consumption site where we can get them in contact with a health professional to get them into treatment, a continuum of care to get them out of that public display of drug use. People misunderstood that and started spreading all this disinformation, all this toxic information, and some people were doing it for political reasons. During that time, I had people of the Chinese community yelling down to me in council chambers, "Go drive a taxi cab.
My goodness.
People like you are our servants. Go back to where you came from.
And this is 2024, 25.
Exactly. Just over a year ago. This is what gets yelled down. Everything I've gone through and everything that I've certainly motivated me to keep moving, they're yelling down. Go back to where you came from. People like you should drive taxi cabs.
And you born here, your mother born here?
I'm born here, mother born here. Maybe I should have bought
And still you have to take that heat, I mean, just because of your color.
Yeah, and it's nonstop. It's nonstop. Even when I was a chief of police, the highest ranking officer in the West Vancouver Police Department, people would say, there goes the Paki and his wife. Well, first of all, my wife is not Indian, but that was the comments that would be there goes the Paki and what, coming from white people.
But do you think it's undue, I should say abusing the freedom of expression and speech when we are promoting the violence or glorification of violence through some floats in our religious processions, or using some words when we say kill India, then we say small politics. Do you think that's acceptable?
No, it's not. Nothing where you promote violence is acceptable, in my opinion. I'm one for civil disobedience, absolutely.
Do you think I'm sorry, I'm just stopping you in between. I don't want my thoughts to go away. Do you think our leaders are somehow responsible for this kind of behavior just to get votes?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They play to their base like you would not believe. And we've just come through the federal election, and the conservatives were playing to the base. Look at what happened with the Republican Party in the United States, playing to their base, calling out all this stuff. That's what they absolutely do, and that's disgusting that you're able to make these comments in the 21st century here in Canada, which we're very proud to be a citizen of this country. We are a multicultural, multi-diverse country, and we need to respect all various aspects of our ethnic background. Even the Aboriginal population, which is, we're on their ceded territory. We have to understand that. We have to respect it. But there are people and elements in society that will never, ever accept that. You've probably faced it. I've faced it. My daughter, who's not all Indian, has also faced it too. So, what more can I say? In the 21st century, in this day and age, and everything that I've managed to accomplish so far, and I'm not finished, and me being in the position I am, still is faced with that.
Mr. Heed, Canada is the leader of human rights, or champion of human rights, that's what we call. And this year we are having the presidency of G7. And we know what Mr. Justin Trudeau, our former Prime Minister, has done to the country in 9 years. What are your expectations from our new Prime Minister, Mark J. Carney, as you are a politician now? You are a community activist, you are Canadian. What are your expectations from Mark J. Carney, and especially from the G7 outcome as well, keeping in mind our relations, or our relations with our friends in South?
What I want to see from this Prime Minister is balanced approaches to everything. You cannot be just one way, or you cannot just be the other way. There needs to be a balanced approach. I believe he is probably one of the smartest individuals we've had as Prime Minister since Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Mm-hmm. We've had several other Prime Ministers that are very thoughtful and educated, but I believe Carney has a real opportunity here to put Canada at the forefront and to where it should be, and still maintain the balance of being a country that respects human rights, respects civil rights. We're not going to trample people's rights. We're going to have balanced policies here in Canada. That's what we need, whether it's for economic trade purposes so the country prospers, or whether it's on the social aspect side of how we have to take care of our people in this country.
I'm very thankful to you for all your precious time. It's been more than 1 hour, I think, if I'm not wrong. My producer can tell me the exact time he said this, more than 1 hour, but it was really nice discussion with you. And we will definitely love to have you more on our show on different topics and different discussions. Once again, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
ਕੈਸ਼ ਹੀਡ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਸੁਣੀ ਐਜ਼ ਆਈ ਸੈਡ ਅਰਲੀਅਰ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਆਟੋ ਡਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਈਏ ਜਾਂ ਇਹਦੀ ਡਬਿੰਗ ਕਰਾ ਕੇ ਸੋ ਦੈਟ ਕਿ ਸਾਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਸਕੇ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਵੈਸੇ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੈਸ਼ ਹੀਡ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ, ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਹੋ। ਔਰ ਕੈਸ਼ ਹੀਡ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰ ਹਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਹਾਊਸਿਸ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਇਹ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹੈ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ BBC ਹੋਏ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਬ੍ਰੌਡਕਾਸਟਰ CBC ਜਾਂ ਗਲੋਬਲ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਅਦਾਰੇ ਹੋਣ, ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ। ਐਂਡ ਆਈ ਐਮ personally from the bottom of my heart I'm very thankful to Mr. Kash Heed ਕਿ ਉਹ ਇੰਨਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਏ ਔਰ ਆ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਇਸੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਵੀ ਹੋਰ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਵੀ ਲਿਆਉਂਦੇ ਰਹਾਂਗੇ ਔਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਇਸੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਾਂਗੇ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ, ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਔਰ ਲਾਈਕ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਰਿਓ ਔਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਿਓ ਕਿ ਹੋਰ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਬੁਲਾਈਏ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਇਸੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਵਧਾਉਂਦੇ ਰਹੀਏ। ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਰਬੀ ਦੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਟੀਮ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਔਰ ਇਨਸਾਈਟ ਵਿਦ ਸਮੀਰ ਕੌਸ਼ਲ ਦੀ ਟੀਮ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ, ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਜੀ।